I've seen a lot of things in 38 years on this bench. I've seen murderers cry. I've seen innocent men go to prison because they couldn't afford the right lawyer. I've seen mothers beg for their children and fathers crumble under the weight of their mistakes. I thought I had seen every kind of arrogance this world could produce. I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. I was wrong, because on a cold Wednesday morning in November, a young woman walked through the doors of my courtroom and said something no one in nearly 4 decades had ever dared say to my face. She looked me directly in the eyes, smiled like she was doing me a favor just by showing up, and said 'For words. You work for us.' For words to set in motion one of the most extraordinary 60 seconds this courtroom had ever witnessed. By the time those 60 seconds were over, her smile was gone, her freedom was gone, and everything she thought she knew about how the world worked had been shattered into pieces on my courtroom floor. My name is Judge Judy Scheindlin, and this is a morning I will never forget. I have seen wealth used as a weapon more times than I can count. I have watched rich people walk into courtrooms expecting the rules to bend around them like a river bends around a mountain. Most of the time their attorneys are smart enough to keep them quiet, but every once in a while someone walks in who simply cannot stop themselves. They open their mouth and they let you see exactly who they are, and when that happens in my courtroom, I am ready. I am always ready. Let me tell you about Vivian Hargrove. 22 years old, hair the color of expensive highlights that cost more than my first car. She walked into my courtroom wearing a white blazer, silk blouse, tailored trousers, and heels that clicked against the tile like a metronome counting down to something she didn't see coming. Her handbag was the kind of red that says I paid $12,000 for this and I want you to know it. Everything about her appearance was a statement. Everything about the way she moved was a declaration. She was not walking into a courtroom. She was making an entrance. Her father was Edmund Hargrove. Hargrove Capital. Real estate across 14 states. A technology portfolio worth $4 billion. The kind of wealth that doesn't just open doors, it builds the doors, owns the building, and has the city name the street after it. Vivian had grown up watching doors open before her father even reached for the handle. She had grown up in a world where the word no was a suggestion, not a sentence, and she had made the catastrophic mistake of believing that world extended into my courtroom. She was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her 22 years. The charges against her were serious: aggravated assault, obstruction of justice, and tampering with a witness. 3 separate incidents, all connected, all building on each other like floors of a building constructed on a cracked foundation. It had started 6 weeks earlier at a restaurant in the financial district. A young woman named Priya Sharma, a paralegal working 60-hour weeks to save money for law school, had accidentally bumped into Vivian's table while being escorted to her seat. A glass tipped. Nothing spilled on anyone. Priya had immediately apologized. Genuinely, the way a decent person does. Most people would have smiled and gone back to their dinner. Vivian Hargrove was not most people. What happened next was captured on the restaurant security camera in perfect clarity. Vivian stood up, looked Priya directly in the face, and threw the contents of her water glass at her. Deliberately, slowly, with a smile. Then she grabbed Priya by the arm hard enough to leave bruises still visible 3 days later and said, "People like you should look where they're going when people like me are in the room." Priya filed a police report that same night. 3 weeks later she received a call from a number she didn't recognize. The voice told her that if she didn't withdraw her complaint, things would become very difficult for her. The caller referenced her home address, her work schedule, and the name of her younger sister away at college. Investigators traced the call within 48 hours. It came from a prepaid phone purchased 2 days earlier at a convenience store 3 blocks from the Hargrove family residence. Security footage showed Vivian purchasing that phone herself, cash, sunglasses on inside the store like that somehow made her invisible. The third charge came 1 week later. Vivian showed up at Priya's workplace on a Tuesday afternoon and stood on the sidewalk across the street for 40 minutes, watching the entrance with her arms folded. Priya spotted her from the 3rd-floor window, went directly to the bathroom, locked the door and called police from the floor, with her back against the wall. That image stayed with me throughout this entire case. A young woman sitting on a cold bathroom floor calling for help because she was too frightened to stand. That is who was now walking into my courtroom with a $12,000 handbag and heels that announced her arrival like a fanfare. Her attorney, Clifton Marsh, arrived first and arranged his files with the practiced efficiency of a man preparing for damage control. He glanced toward the door with the expression of an attorney who already knew his client was going to be a problem. He was right. Vivian arrived 4 minutes after him. She pushed through the courtroom doors and walked to the defense table like she was walking through her own living room. She looked at me, and she smiled. The kind of smile that tells you someone doesn't consider you a threat. I waited. I am very good at waiting. Silence makes certain people deeply uncomfortable, particularly people accustomed to filling every room with the sound of their own importance. I watched her reach for her phone. I let her get all the way to unlocking the screen before I spoke. Miss Hargrove. My voice came out low and even. Please put the phone away. We are in session. She looked up, held my gaze 1 second longer than was appropriate, then dropped the phone into her bag with a small sigh. The sigh of someone doing a favor. Miss Hargrove, you are charged with aggravated assault, obstruction of justice, and tampering with a witness. These are serious felony charges. Do you understand the nature of what you are facing today? Her attorney started to respond, but Vivian put a hand on his arm, stopping him. I'll answer, she said pleasantly. She looked at me and said, I understand what it says on the paper. I just don't think any of it is accurate. I decided to let her keep talking. Miss Hargrove, the security footage shows you throwing water at Miss Sharma and grabbing her arm. How do you characterize what happened that evening? She tilted her head. Priya bumped our table and made a scene. I overreacted with the water, I'll acknowledge that, but grabbing her arm. I was keeping her from falling. The floor was wet. I was trying to help her. From the third row, Priya Sharma made a sound so small that only the people immediately around her heard it. I heard it. I always hear everything. The bruises on Miss Sharma's arm, I said, were consistent with a forceful grip maintained for several seconds. The restaurant manager states you were not steadying her. He says you held her in place while you spoke to her. Do you have a response to that? People remember things differently under stress, Vivian said carefully. The manager was across the room. I know what happened. Her attorney shifted uncomfortably beside her. He knew exactly where this was going. So did I. Let's talk about the phone call, I said. The prepaid phone purchased 3 blocks from your home. The security footage of you buying it. The call made to Miss Sharma referencing her address, her schedule, her sister's name. Walk me through that. Something shifted behind Vivian's eyes. Not guilt. Calculation. I didn't make any call to harass anyone, she said. Whatever the footage shows, there is an innocent explanation. An innocent explanation, I repeated slowly. I have found that repeating someone's words back to them in a quiet voice is one of the most effective tools available. To a judge, she had a rehearsed sentence. She had delivered it ahead of schedule. I picked up Priya Sharma's victim impact statement. Before I deliver this court's ruling, I want you to hear something, I said. I'm going to read this aloud. Vivian's expression flickered. Her attorney put a hand on her arm. She did not shake it off this time. My name is Priya Sharma. I am 26 years old. I grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment with my mother and my sister. My mother worked double shifts for 15 years so that I could go to college. I have worked every day of my adult life towards something I believe in. I have never harmed anyone. I continued reading. On October 14th, I accidentally bumped a table in a restaurant. I apologized immediately. What happened next changed my life. I have not slept through a single night since. I check the locks on my door 3 times before bed. I take a different route to work every day. I have not called my sister in 3 weeks because I am afraid that talking to her will put her in danger. The courtroom was absolutely silent. I looked up at Vivian. She was staring at the table in front of her. I watched her swallow once. Miss Hargrove, that is what you did to another human being. Not because she wronged you, not because she threatened you, because a glass tipped and she said sorry and you decided that sorry wasn't enough. You decided that fear was the appropriate response to an apology. Vivian looked up. Something in her face now was different. Not quite remorse. Something closer to the first moment someone realizes a situation is real. That it has weight, that it has consequence, that it is not going to be handled with a phone call from her father's attorney. I stood up from the bench. When I do that, everyone in my courtroom knows something significant is about to happen. I have been doing this long enough that certain gestures carry weight. The gallery leaned forward. Even Clifton Marsh sat up straighter. Vivian Hargrove, I am remanding you into custody immediately pending a bail hearing. Tomorrow morning. Her head came up sharply. What? Her attorney was on his feet. Your Honor, my client is not a flight risk. She has significant ties to this community. Counselor, your client made a phone call designed to terrorize a witness. Your client stood outside that witness's workplace for 40 minutes as deliberate intimidation. Your client has demonstrated zero understanding of the harm she caused. I will not release her on her own recognizance. Bail will be set tomorrow. Vivian stood up so fast her chair scraped back against the floor. You cannot do this. Her voice had lost all its polish. All the practiced pleasantness was gone and what was underneath was something raw and frightened and very young. Do you know who my father is? I looked at her calmly. I know exactly who your father is, Miss Hargrove. I have walked past his name on the wall every morning for 3 years. It has never once affected how I do my job. It is not going to start today. Her face went white. Then she said it. She looked directly at me across that courtroom and with every thread of entitlement she had left, she said, "You work for us." The gallery erupted. People were talking, shifting, someone gasped. Even Clifton Marsh closed his eyes briefly like a man who had just watched something irreversible happen. I waited for the noise to settle. I did not raise my voice. I never raise my voice. I don't need to. I looked at Vivian Hargrove and said very quietly, "Bailiff, take her into custody." And just like that, it was over. The bailiff moved toward her. Vivian looked at her attorney. He shook his head slowly. She looked toward the gallery, searching for her father. Edmund Hargrove was not in the courtroom. He had sent his attorney, but not himself. That told me everything I needed to know about Edmund Hargrove. As the bailiff reached her, something finally broke in Vivian's face. Quietly, the way things break when there is nothing left to hold them together. She let the bailiff take her arm. Her $12,000 handbag was left on the defense table. Her heels clicked against the courthouse floor one last time as they led her out. I turned to Priya Sharma. She was sitting perfectly still in the third row, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes bright. "Miss Sharma, do you have anything you would like to say?" She stood slowly. "Your Honor, I almost didn't come today. I almost withdrew the complaint because I was frightened. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad someone listened." I looked at her for a moment. "What you did took courage. This court sees you. This court heard you. Don't ever let anyone convince you that your safety matters less than someone else's comfort." 6 months later, Vivian was convicted on the obstruction and tampering charges. She was sentenced to 90 days in county jail, 2 years probation, and 200 hours of community service. Her father hired 3 legal teams attempting to reduce the sentence. None of them succeeded. Priya Sharma passed her last 8 months after the trial. She was accepted to law school on a partial scholarship. She sent a letter to my chambers when she received her acceptance. It was 2 sentences. It said, "I wanted you to know. I didn't let them take this from me. I kept that letter. It's in my desk drawer." Vivian served her full sentence. No early release. No special arrangements. By the 4th week, something had shifted in her. She stopped demanding. She started listening. By the end of her community service, she had written a letter to Priya Sharma. I was told Priya read it twice, folded it carefully, and put it in a drawer. That was enough. What Vivian Hargrove learned in that courtroom was something $4 billion had never taught her. That other people are real. That their fear is real. That the world does not reorganize itself around your convenience just because it always has before. "You work for us," she had said, for words that proved she had never once considered that the law exists to protect everyone equally, including the people she had decided were beneath her consideration. She was wrong, and in my courtroom, being wrong has consequences. That is not a threat. That is the only promise this bench has ever made, and the only one it has ever needed to make.